I introduce my colleague Ziska from Berlin, and I'm here outside from Berlin, and we are doing comics together since 20 years. So we will tell you about how we make a comic story of, say, 2 or 3 pages, and I'll hand the microphone over to Ziska to tell something about finding the story and doing the dramaturgy.
Yeah, we start with 2 kinds of stories. There's either a character-driven story or a plot-driven story. So take a plot-driven story, it's like when you want to tell a short joke or a long joke, or you know already what the story is like. Then you decide who's going to experience the story. So then you say it's a story-driven or plot-driven story. And then there's the character-driven story. It's just you have a good idea for a good character, and you think, what could this character experience? And you can have like a character that's a sneaky character, that's a very sad character, whatever this character feels like, then the story will move over, because you know the character so much while inventing the story that you know what can happen to this character. So take for example a love story or a couple. We start with a couple in love with each other and looking. No, this one. Hand it over to you.
Well, we have this couple in love, and they're looking for a quiet coffee house to have a talk together and a glass of wine. So they. Yeah, but we have a man and a woman, so that are in love with each other, and say they're young people and want to talk about some problems about their relationship. So they sit in this quiet coffee house. And okay, the situation is this, that the guy wants to propose marriage to his girlfriend. And while he begins to speak to her, a musician enters the coffee house, playing on a, say, violin, something wonderful and quiet.
Okay, this is like a very old coffee house, and a very big place. Small place, okay, it's a small place. So the guy is very shy, and he doesn't know how to propose her. Then take the character. It's a character. What kind of character can this be? He doesn't know how to find the words, and so he's very happy that this violin player appears. And so this makes up the character when you imagine how's the girl. So she's sitting there. She's probably self-conscious. You describe it.
Okay, the girl expects him to propose marriage, and then the violinist's music fits wonderful for the situation. Then another musician comes in, say.
So a story usually has 3 parts. Every story, even a short joke, has 3 parts. You can divide these 3 parts into more parts, like 5 parts or 7 parts. The first part is the establishing of the story. That's where we find out who is playing in the story. Like we say it's a girl and a guy, and we say it's in a coffee house, and we say he's very shy, he doesn't know how to propose her, and she's expecting it. So this is the establishing of the story. And every story has this in a way. It's pretty boring for someone who's reading a lot when the story starts. Peter is 12 years old, and he got up in the morning, his alarm clock rings. It's always much better to just jump into the story and start at a very late moment. Something happens, unexpected. This brings up a new part in the story, because suddenly it's a romantic situation, but suddenly a third person is coming to the situation.
Okay, so they sit with fitting music for the proposal, but the guy can't find the right words. And at that moment, another musician comes in and starts playing his own thing without paying attention to the musician already here. So a sort of musical chaos ensues. It's a guitarist who is playing rock music, doesn't agree with the violinist. So the guy who wants to do the proposal gets confused.
So suddenly the situation changes completely. He's in a conflict situation suddenly. He hopes that both the musicians will stop so he can continue with his proposal, or on the other side all the romantic atmosphere is suddenly turned into a kind of musical battle between two musicians.
Okay, the guy is forced to speak louder, which he can't really do. He shouts his proposal at his girlfriend, or at least tries to. Then musician number 3 enters the coffee house without paying attention to the two already there. Say it's a trumpeter.
So then we have the second part of the story already began, and this is called conflict. So what is conflict about? We have the guy. He wants something. He wants to make a proposal. So he has an intention, a will, a goal, or he just has expectations of how the evening should go. But something is coming, and that's called the antagonist power. It's like the music. So he has to see how to get out of this, or to stick with this situation. Maybe shout louder, maybe make it like it's a very funny situation, whatever. She doesn't understand. So that's what a conflict is about. And every story is about a conflict. There's no story without a conflict. Always a conflict is when two kind of intentions or forces come together. Like it's someone wanting this and another person wanting that, so we have a conflict. And the stronger the intention is, the stronger the antagonism can be. And this also can be very, very funny, and can be very, very dramatic. And you can also say, like, someone wants to kill himself, and then the whole world is trying to keep him alive. For example, it's like a very sad intention, but the world responds with happiness. And then also, I don't know how you feel now, because we don't do this very often, and it's the first time that we do it like this. Do you want to know how the story continues? Yes. So that's also how a story works.
Now comes the reason why we picked a small romantic coffee house instead of a big one. A street pianist enters the coffee house, pushing his piano into a small coffee house, and starts playing as well. This ruins the romantic situation. We have a cacophony of music, and the guy's evening is ruined. He can't make himself understood anymore. Then we near the culmination of the story, as a band of Mexican mariachis enters the coffee house, 12 men strong.
25-person choir, men's choir. Everyone is very loud and tries to be the loudest of them all. So the guy has to make his proposal louder and louder.
But in the general noise, he can't make himself understood no more. He can't say anything anymore in the noise. No, it doesn't work. She isn't able to hear him, and they try to get out because the coffee house is crowded by noise, very, very loud.
So they find their way out, right? They find their way out of the coffee house. Finally, when he's shouting at the highest point of the noise, he's shouting his proposal to her. She doesn't understand. And the third part of the story is the conclusion. So now I hope that someone here wants to know how the story ends. I mean, it's not an end that they just get out. It's unsatisfying. So, especially in comics, we need, or we don't need it. There are also comics that don't need it, but in a funny comic, it's most important. And in another story, you wouldn't say it's a pointer or punchline. In another story, it can just be something that is a satisfying last sentence or a satisfying last word. And in a long story, this can also be like the solution, like when you have a love story, they get together, or when you have a criminal case, the case is solved, and after the case is solved, there's still a little moment where you say, goodbye, we are leaving you now, the story ends.
Well, Ziska and I invented a story some 20 minutes ago, and we keep disagreeing about how it goes. But my preferred end would be that they get out of the coffee house with their clothes ruined and in tatters on the noisy street, and are both stone deaf. And no, they can't talk to each other anymore because they're usury. This is my way of ending it. So.
There could be a different ending. There could be an ending that she's upset and says, you took me to this terrible cafe house, and they start arguing and fighting and separate each other. The end should be a bang. But also the ending could be that there's a very, very poor street musician playing harmonium and having his hat, really having nothing to eat, and playing, asking, do you have some spare money? And then they say, what? or he makes his proposal another time, and she says, what? Can't hear you.
But here is how we disagree. I want stories to end with a bang, punchline, and Ziska wants to tell some more, and keep it petering out.
But now there's the question, we have a story now. So how do we put this story, or did I interrupt you? No. How do we put this story into a comic of 2 or 3 pages?
When we agreed on the story, which might take a couple of months, then we start sketching it. And say we restrict ourselves to 2 pages, and then we start doing a storyboard and try to constrict the story to 2 pages and decide that we do like 3 strips on a page. Okay, this is basically out. Then we try to put this story, which is probably too short, maybe add a 3rd page then, and try to tell the story in, say, so many pictures or frames, as we say. Reserve this for the title. And then we do sketch work and see how this could run, and where it's ending. And we do sketches with pencil, and when we are happy with the sketches, when they are finished, this is the main work on the comic book, then we trace them on the light table and ink them. Now I pay attention, or we pay attention, to that the pages that lie side by side look harmonious together. So when I do the artwork, I pay attention that there's like, I don't know, some sort of composition running through. Maybe so, or maybe so, I don't know.
We always, if we try to put the story into these frames, we normally start with very simple, just saying girl and guy in a cafe. He wants to make a proposal. Atmosphere. He starts like, yeah, there is something. It's a very special day for us today. So this would be. We could put this more earlier. So it's always about to cook things down to the minimum of what we need, because comic is also very much reduction. It doesn't need to be so epic if it's a short story. So we always try to put things together in one picture if possible. And also it's a comic, it's not a book with words, so we try to use as less words as possible.
Okay, in a comic book, in our opinion, the pictures tell most of the story, and the text is supports this, but the pictures don't.
And you also can, if it's difficult to put all this into the story, then you can start also from the end of the story to see what's necessary here, and then you see, okay, then I can maybe put this together, or erase one idea, doesn't need to make all ideas, or I need more pages. But usually you have a limit of pages, like and if you work for a magazine and they say you have one page, and you have to do this story in one page, and you don't have more space.
In our coffee house story, this would mean less musicians and a faster escalation towards the culmination point, to restrict us to one page. This also applies to doing a large comic book, like we do comic books of 64 pages, and that restricts us too. We can't waste too much space on things that aren't very important for the story.
Вы сами какие больше истории любите? Длинные или короткие?
Well, we do comic albums in Germany of 64 pages, and we have done 4 together, or 5? 4.5, okay. And we are used to this sort of work, but we both do a lot of short comics for magazines, or just single cartoons for newspapers and so on, or do just work for ourselves that is not meant to be printed or published. So.
And to be honest, sometimes we also work for the devil. That's what we say when someone's paying us for drawing a terrible commercial shit.
Yeah, when the fridge is empty, then we don't work for everybody. We don't work for right-wing newspapers or things like this, no matter what money we pay. But we have to go to conservative papers sometimes if they pay us. If we are out of money, we have to pay rent and insurance and all that shit.